Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is your horoscope for the full moon partial lunar eclipse happening on November 19th, 2021. So let's get started. And this eclipse is happening at 27 degrees of Taurus, 27 degrees and 14 minutes. So that's where it's happening, and the chart is open to Pacific time. So this is happening very close to midnight, I would say about 1 a.m. Pacific time. And for the eastern part of the world, that would make it morning Friday, November 19th, or about noon or 1 p.m. depending on where you're at. And if you want to know the exact time, you can always convert the Pacific time to your time zone to know exactly when the eclipse is happening for you. All right, so let's talk about the eclipse. Now, what is an eclipse? Very simply put, this is first of all a full moon partial lunar eclipse. So it is a full moon, and a full moon is when the moon and the sun oppose each other, 180-degree angle. They're opposing each other. So that's a full moon, and it becomes an eclipse when it is close to the nodes, the south node here and the north node here. So essentially that is what an eclipse is, a new moon or a full moon very close to the north node or the south node. And the basic difference between an eclipse and a regular full moon is that eclipse energy stays with us for a much longer time, 6 months at the very least, whereas a full moon energy stays with us for about 2 weeks, a month at most. So that's one of the most important differences. The second important difference is that eclipses are karmic, because the north, let me clean up the chart, the north node here and the south node here, the Rahu and Ketu, these are karmic points. They bring about karmic events. So when we have an eclipse, it is a karmic event. It is a fated event. It is an event destined to happen. And this eclipse starts eclipse season, which is the period between eclipses. And we will be in this period till December 4th or 5th, depending on where you're at, when we will have the next eclipse. So this period starting now with this eclipse is karmic, it's fated, it's destined. And let's talk a little bit more about this eclipse. So this is a full moon partial lunar eclipse, right? And we also have a new moon solar eclipse, but this is a full moon partial lunar eclipse, which means it is about completions, it is about endings, it is about release and culminations. That is what a full moon eclipse is all about: release, endings, and completions. Now, before we move on, I also want to mention that eclipse day is really not the best time to decide something or, react to something. So if there's something going on this particular day, just let the energy sink in, imbibe the energy, and then maybe decide or do whatever you have to a few days later, or at least 2-3 days later. Now let's move on. So this particular eclipse is happening in the sign of Taurus and Scorpio. It's at 27 degrees 14 minutes of Scorpio, and 27 degrees 14 minutes of Taurus, and the sun here is at 27 degrees 14 minutes of Scorpio. So it is happening on the Taurus Scorpio axis, right? Which means it will bring about these themes. Now, what are these themes? Taurus is the sign that rules the material wealth. It's the sign of stability. It's the sign of beauty. It's the sign of security. It tells us what we feel secure with. It's also the sign of abundance, and it also tells you what you enjoy in life, right? It's also indulgences. All these things are Taurus. Taurus is where we manifest. So Taurus, in many ways, is very concerned with the material world around us, material wealth, beauty, and finding stability and security and resources. All these things are Taurus. Now, Scorpio is the other end of the spectrum, right? It's one axis. It's the so-called opposite sign. And Scorpio, in many ways, rules very many opposite things compared to Taurus. So it rules the hidden world, not the material world. It rules the spiritual world. It is about going beneath the surface, right? It's not about finding security and comfort, but it's about finding the truth, discovering the truth. It's about facing our fears rather than indulging in things. So they're very different energies, but that being said, they cannot exist without one another, right? For Scorpio, you need Taurus, and for Taurus, you need Scorpio. So in many ways, they cannot be without one another. And Scorpio is also the sign of transformation. It's the sign of catharsis, of healing, of regeneration, of purification, of letting go of intimate relationships. So why I am mentioning all these things about Taurus and Scorpio is because this eclipse is going to highlight all these things, right? They're very different things, but they form one axis, which means they're interrelated, right? One cannot truly exist without the other. So these are the themes this eclipse is going to highlight. And this is a full moon eclipse, right? Which means it's about releasing, it's about ending something. So you can also think of ending something as transformation, right? Because when we end something, we begin something. And that in itself is transformation. So this eclipse will help us transform what we value. It will help us transform how we feel about ourselves. It will help us transform what we indulge in, and even our material wealth or material world, so to speak. And Uranus here has been in Taurus since 2018 and 2019, definitely. And Uranus in Taurus is all about changing all these Taurus themes that I just mentioned. What we value, how we feel about ourselves, our material world. It's about changing up all these things. And it's a slow energy. It's going to take 7 years to do this. But we are already doing this. So this eclipse is just going to magnify that change, magnify that transformation that we have been undergoing for quite some time now. And moving on to what else this eclipse will transform, which is an ending and a beginning combined, right? That's what a transformation basically is. On one hand, it will touch upon these Taurian themes, or what we value, what we find beautiful, our sense of self, our self-worth, our material world, our finances, all these things. And on the other end of the spectrum, it is also going to transform us, because it will require us to face our fears. And since the new moon in Scorpio that happened on November 4th, we've been doing a lot of this Scorpio work of facing our fears, facing the dark and rising into the light, of catharsis, of releasing things, of letting go of things. And this eclipse is a very important step in that as well. It will help us transform ourselves. It will bring about a spiritual transformation, a subconscious transformation, a transformation from the dark into the light. And it's about transforming ourselves from the inside out, Scorpio. And Taurus in many ways is about transforming ourselves from the outside in, right? So it's a major transformation what this eclipse is going to bring. And a lot of release could be happening with this eclipse, a lot of it. And that's because Scorpio here is about release, it's about letting go. And a lot of the times, release is not always, or letting go is not always, picking up the phone and saying, hey, it's over. No, it's also about releasing the pain, the subconscious stuff we have buried inside of us from the past, maybe a past relationship, because Scorpio is also intimate relationships. Maybe some of that stuff we need to release to fully move on. So this is the basic theme of this eclipse, transforming what we value, how we feel about ourselves, our material wealth, as well as transforming our spirituality, letting go of a lot of fears, subconscious pain, and facing our fears and clearing out the subconscious. These are the major themes. And moving on, I do want to mention a couple of other things. That this eclipse, yes, it's about endings, and we've talked about what this will end in many ways, which means what it will transform, all the things that I just mentioned. But it is also an eclipse about culmination and completion. So what else could be happening with this eclipse is two more things. First, an energy that started with the new moon in Taurus in May of this year is becoming clearer. Right? The new moon in Taurus was about a new energy, a new beginning to how we feel about ourselves, our material world, our materiality. And that happened in May of this year, and now is the culmination point of that energy. So in many ways, maybe what we started in May is becoming clearer, connected to our self-worth, how we feel about ourselves, what we value, what we consider beautiful, our resources, our material wealth. And the second thing that's becoming a little more clear now is what started with the new moon in Scorpio on November 4th, because this is the full moon, right? On new moon, we seed the energy, we plant it. We can't see very clearly, it's the darkest night of the month. The moon's not there at night. And on a full moon, it's the brightest night of the month. So on the full moon, we can see what we planted on the new moon. What was it? What plant was it? Or what seed did you plant? So now maybe there's more clarity on what started for you on November 4th, what you began to release, what you began to transform, things like that. So these are the other two things that we might be culminating at this point. And before we move on, I do want to mention that eclipse energy is the most intense on the day of the eclipse, but eclipse energy is something that we work on for months. So yes, it will be very intense initially, but it's not something that will end with the next new moon or few days from now. This energy is something that we will work on for about 6 months or so. So keep that in mind, and a lot of transformation is going to go on. So that's the basic energy for this eclipse, right? And now I will talk about the aspects this eclipse is making. So let's see the eclipse again. There's the moon 2714, there's the sun 2714 of Scorpio. And this eclipse is in a square, 90-degree angle with Jupiter, right? That's the first aspect. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion, of healing, of blessings, rewards, lessons. And it is a magnifier. It magnifies anything it touches. Jupiter is really, really big. So whatever planet it comes in contact with, it kind of makes that energy really big. So in this case, the eclipse energy here is very magnified, which means we will feel this eclipse in a very magnified way. It could also be that since this eclipse is about transformation to our material world, how we feel about ourselves as well as our hidden world and our spiritual world, the energy of transformation is really magnified. A lot of transformation, expansive transformation. Or it could also be that we learn a lesson. Jupiter is lessons as well. And that helps us transform and get kick-started with this energy. So that's the first aspect. And basically, very simply put, this is just magnifying the eclipse energy. Magnifying the transformation that we will go through, magnifying the release and the endings and the beginnings. And going back to the new moon in Scorpio that happened on November 4th, that new moon was in an opposition to Uranus and it squared Saturn, right? And in many ways, that was a pivotal point towards something that we have been working towards all of 2021, the Saturn-Uranus square. right? Saturn-Uranus square, I will come back to this, but I just want to give you a brief background. The Saturn-Uranus square is an energy that we are seeing after 21 years, so it's not very common. And we will see it all of this year. It started at the beginning of this year and will continue till the end of next year. So it's almost an energy that'll be with us for a year and a half, 2 years. And this energy, after 21 years, is asking us what? It's asking us to embrace our truth, embrace our true, authentic self, let go of the old. In many ways, you can sum this up as transformation, transforming from the old into the new, and transforming from the idea of who we think we should be into who we truly are. And we will continue the work till next year. But this new moon in Scorpio, which happened on November 4th, was a very important step towards moving towards that energy. Moving towards our truth, moving towards transforming, moving towards letting go of the old a little bit more. And it did involve, in many ways, an internal transformation. And why I bring that up is because now we're in this energy where we have the eclipse, and a lot of the transformation we will be doing, since it's all about transforming, is connected to that idea of getting rid of the old, embracing the new, getting rid of the idea of who we think we should be, and embracing our true authentic self. So first aspect is a square to Jupiter, right? Which means we can feel this energy of transformation more intensely. And the reason I brought up the Saturn-Uranus square is because this transformation is like no other. We have the Saturn-Uranus square asking us to transform, and with this eclipse, with Jupiter squaring this, it can be a major, major transformation that we haven't seen in a while. So that's the first aspect, and that's the only stressful aspect this eclipse is making. Now, stressful aspects like squares represent friction, right? But they also represent growth. So with the square to Jupiter, we might just learn a few things. Jupiter is lessons, it's knowledge, it's wisdom, so that we can transform better. It might feel a little challenging, the square to Jupiter, but it's not negative. That's the first aspect. Now, second aspect is a trine to Pluto. So the moon here is in a trine with Pluto. Now, Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio, right? Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. And in many ways, Pluto represents the same things as Scorpio. Transformation, healing, catharsis, purification, letting go, spiritual transformation, facing the dark, facing our fears, facing our issues, facing our subconscious to rise into the light, right? And Pluto is making a positive aspect with the moon, with the eclipse. So the transformation energy is even more magnified, right? And what is Pluto? Pluto is transformation. This eclipse is asking for transformation. And with a positive aspect, a trine, in many ways it's going to flow. There might be some intensity with the square to Jupiter where we might need to learn a lesson or change up something. But the new moon in Scorpio really started this energy of transformation. And the week before this eclipse, was it the week before, when the Mars Saturn square happened and the Mars Uranus opposition happened, so basically 10 days in between the new moon and the eclipse, we did a lot of that work. We did a lot of transformation. And now with this trine to Pluto, that transformation is getting easier for us. The majority of the work we've done in many ways with the new moon in Scorpio. So this aspect, will just make that transformation easier. Okay, now we'll talk about the third aspect, and that is a sextile to Neptune. So this moon here is making a 60-degree angle with Neptune. Now, Neptune is the planet of the higher realms. It's also the planet of the subconscious. It's the planet of dreams and sleep, right? Neptune is also a very magical energy, very creative energy, very spiritual energy. And on the flip side, it can also bring about a lot of confusion and a feeling of feeling low. but this is a positive aspect. So what this could mean is that in many ways we feel quite positive, although it's asking a lot of us, right? Since the new moon in Scorpio, a lot has been asked of us, a lot of transformation. But somehow with the sextile to the moon, Neptune sextile the moon, there's a spiritual feeling about all this, all the transformation that we're going through. It feels like we're getting more in tune with our spirituality, more in tune with our spiritual self. That's one manifestation of this energy. The second manifestation is that since this eclipse is about transformation, right? And it's trining Pluto. And you can say the sun here is in a trine with Neptune, right? Both these are positive aspects. So what this could mean is that as we release a lot of the buried stuff inside us, as we let go of all that stuff inside us, Scorpio, and we transform spiritually. I will come back to the thought that I just had. Okay. And as we transform spiritually, all this could also happen in our dreams, because Neptune is dreams, right? And I did mention it once that a lot of our subconscious stuff happens in dreams. So it's not always that, you're picking up the phone and saying, hey, I don't want to speak to you anymore, or hey, I'm moving on. No, it's not like that always. Sometimes it's just we've gone through a painful event, somebody's hurt us, whatever it is, or we've hurt somebody, and the reality is over, right? That relationship is over, that event is over, but we still carry it with us. It influences our subconscious. It creates fear in us. Maybe you've been hurt, so you're scared of being hurt again. That's a fear. Maybe you've hurt someone, so you feel scared that I might do that again. So these are fears, and they're all buried in the subconscious. And a lot of the times when and this is about releasing these things. It's about releasing these fears, right? This whole energy since the new moon in Scorpio on November 4th. So what I'm trying to say is this could be happening at a very subtle level, even as we sleep, Neptune, even as we dream, Neptune. All this could be happening. That's why I wanted to bring this up. And yes, the thought that I had was, now this is not my original thought, okay? I read it somewhere, I read it in a book, so don't give me credit for it. It's not mine. I read that Neptune here is in a sextile with Pluto, 60-degree angle. I know I'm deviating, I'll come back to the moon, but I think this is important. Neptune here is in a sextile with Pluto, right? 60-degree angle, 4-degree difference. And they've been in this placement for quite some time, right? Many years. And what that book said was that as we transform our spirituality, Neptune, we transform our psychology, Pluto. And as we transform our psychology, Pluto, we transform our spirituality, Neptune. In many ways, our spirituality is dependent on our psychology, and our psychology on our spirituality. Because what is this? What is releasing fears and doing all this work? In many ways, it ties down to our psychology, which is what Pluto is. But Pluto is also spiritual transformation. So in many ways, we have to really work on ourselves to grow spiritually. Spiritual growth does not happen with fears and pain and blocks and hate. It does not happen like that. It's a tough process, and it requires us to clean up all that stuff buried inside us, Pluto. Let go of all that stuff, Pluto. And this whole energy, yes, it's about transforming and it's about all those things, but very deeply and very intensely, it's about spiritual transformation, which can only happen when we release all that stuff preventing us from growing. So that's the thought that I had. I read this in a book. I don't recall which one. But yeah, I read this in a book somewhere and it stuck with me. Some things you read, they just stick with you. So this is one of those things. And let's talk about the last aspect this eclipse is making. The moon here is opposing Mercury, right? Which could mean that this eclipse can also bring about a change in our Mercury things. Mercury is not just our thinking, not just our communication, but if we transform our subconscious, If we let go of fears and the pain, our logical mind also changes. So that could be happening automatically as a result of the inner deep transformation we're going through. But Mercury is also our routine, it's our lifestyle, it's our job, it's our health, it's our diet, it's our day-to-day. Think of Mercury as the day-to-day. What time do you wake up? What exercise do you? What do you eat? What's your job? All these things are Mercury. What's your environment like? What's your workspace like? Immediate environment. What is your immediate peer group like? All these things are Mercury. So Mercury in many ways is the day-to-day, right? And this moon is opposing Mercury. So it could bring about a change in these things as well. It could bring about a change in our day-to-day, what time we wake up, what time we sleep. It could change our thinking. It could change how we communicate. It could change the way we exercise, Mercury. I know in astrology we don't really speak about these things, like diet and exercise and our routine, but because it's considered to be the mundane. But the mundane is very important in connecting with the spiritual. At least that's what I feel. So, because through the mundane we learn important lessons, right, that can connect us with the higher realms. So I wouldn't say they're separate, the mundane and the spiritual, or the mundane and the astrological. I would say that they're very intimately connected. And just the way Taurus cannot really exist without Scorpio, and Scorpio cannot exist without Taurus. Similarly, the opposite of the 12th house is the 6th house. 12th house is the spiritual, it's the higher realms, and 6th house is the day-to-day, the mundane. So again, it's a balance we need to find. And similarly with Scorpio and Taurus, it's a balance we need to find between the material and the spiritual, between indulging and between being restrained, between finding pleasure, Taurus, and finding the truth. You kind of need to balance it out. Similarly, in many ways, through the mundane, through the day-to-day, we can really find the spiritual. And oftentimes that comes as a desire to escape the mundane. But the mundane is always involved in some ways. Anyway, I am digressing, so I will come back to this. So this eclipse can involve a change in our thinking, in our communication, in our day-to-day, in what time we wake up, sleep, how we think, our habits, our job, our health, all these things. So those are the 4 aspects this eclipse is making. And I will speak about a few more aspects that are going on in the chart at this point, simply because those will also affect us and impact this energy. So let's talk about those, and then I'll just sum it up real quick, and then I will speak about where this eclipse is happening for your particular rising sign. So let's talk about the other aspects. Now, the first of those is the most important one, and it's that Venus here is trining Uranus. Positive. This is a positive aspect. And Venus rules the sign of Taurus, where the eclipse is happening, right? And what is Uranus? Uranus is sudden change. It's unexpected change. It's the planet that says, hey, I will get rid of anything that comes in your path of you being your true self. That's Uranus. And for that, it can remove things or bring things into our life quite suddenly and unexpectedly. And Uranus is also the planet of higher vibrations, of higher consciousness. It's about raising our vibration as well. So all those things are Uranus, and now it's making a positive aspect with Venus, right? So in many ways, it is changing up our relationships, how we feel about ourselves, our projects that we're working on, and even our material wealth, Venus. Venus is relationships, it's our material wealth, it's our self-worth, it's beauty, it's how we feel about ourselves, it's all these things. And now it's making a positive aspect with the planet of sudden unexpected changes. And those changes eventually get us one more step closer to our truth, to our unique self, to raising our vibration and expanding our consciousness. So we will also see our relationships and projects, perhaps, or our self-worth, how we feel about ourselves, or our finances, Venus, undergo some sort of sudden unexpected change that will lead us one more step closer towards our true authentic self. And this change that will come to Venus things is going to take some time. I know that sounds contradictory, sudden, unexpected, and will take some time. There's a reason I say that. It can come about quite suddenly and unexpectedly, the first change, right, to this. But Venus has entered the zone where it will retrograde towards the end of the year. 11 to 26 degrees of Capricorn is where Venus is going to retrograde. So about this area. So not good at this drawing stuff. Okay. Around this area, right? So Venus has hit 12 degrees and it will hit 12 degrees 3 times. So this is the first sudden, unexpected step in changing our relationships and projects. But it's not complete because Venus is going to retrograde over this area, make aspects with Uranus, and we will work on this energy for quite some time. And since we are speaking about Venus, Venus is in Capricorn right now. And Venus in Capricorn is about committing, right? It's about being serious. It's about committing to our relationships and projects. What can you commit to for the long run? What are you serious about? What are you willing to work on? What relationships and projects? And this whole process will be a review process of Venus, right? Figuring out what we are serious towards. And somehow with Uranus, we might get epiphanies or insights about these things as Venus makes aspects with Uranus. So instead of a sudden change, this could also be an epiphany. Hey, maybe I should do this project this way. And that epiphany may take some time to kind of complete itself, because Venus is going to retrograde and stay for quite some time in Capricorn. So in many ways, this eclipse can also bring us sudden insights, epiphanies, realizations connected to our relationships and projects that will help us assess what we can commit to and work on and be serious about. So that's the first aspect. The second thing is that Venus here is in a sextile with Mars. So whatever epiphany we have or whatever sudden change we go through connected to our relationships, projects, finances, self-worth, values, and skills, we also have the drive, Mars. We also have the initiative and energy, Mars, to move towards that. That's the second aspect. The third is that we just went through Mars-Uranus opposition. I believe it was on Wednesday, 17th November. Yeah. Morning 17th November was the exact. And now Mars is still, you can say, in an opposition, but the intensity is easing off. Mars has moved on to 13 degrees. And this is a change to how we do things, change to how we take action. So why I talk about this is because that's also happening perhaps in changing how we do things and taking action, right? Opposition to Uranus. Our projects, our relationships, our self-worth, our values, our skills are now also maybe undergoing some new information, some insights, or some change. And this is the spot 12 degrees of Scorpio, where we had the new moon in Scorpio, which was in opposition to Uranus. So in many ways, what we went through till Wednesday with Mars opposing Uranus was in continuation with that new moon in Scorpio energy. But now that energy is easing off and we had the new energy kicking in with the eclipse. But both these energies about transformation. And let's talk about the next aspect, right? Saturn sextile Chiron. Now this is also something we've been seeing for months. I think it happened in Feb exact, and it will happen by the end of November exact. Saturn and Chiron will sextile exact. And what is this? For months, since Feb at least, we've been going through a healing. Chiron is the planet of our wounds, but it's also the planet of healing. And Saturn is a builder. It's hard work, it's decisions, it's commitment. So as we commit to things, as we work hard towards things, as we build our life, the life that started in December of 2020, because Saturn and Jupiter conjuncted in the sign of Aquarius, and Saturn is still in Aquarius, building that life for us, will do till 2023. Again, I'm digressing. Coming back to this. So for months, Saturn has been here. And it's been sextiling Chiron. So through decisions, through hard work, through commitment, we are healing. We are healing. And this is no different. On this moon, on this eclipse, there's an element of healing as well. And this ties into what started at the beginning of the year, Feb. Exact. And this will come exact, I think, November 26th. Don't hold me to this. It's end of November, that I know. I can't recall the date. But that's what's going to happen. So in many ways, this eclipse will also help us heal by taking decisions, making commitments, defining things. And the new moon in Scorpio energy was in a square to Saturn. It did require us to define things, take decisions, make commitments, work hard. And the last aspect that I will speak about is Mercury here. Yes, it's opposing the eclipse energy, but it is trining Neptune. Right? So whatever change we go through to our thinking, to our logical mind, to our communication, routine, diet, health, lifestyle, job, etc., has a magical spiritual element to it. It could be that we say, okay, I'm changing up my job. Now, this is an extreme example, I know. It could be something as simple as changing up your thinking. So you say, I'm changing up my job. And in many ways, this job feels more spiritually aligned, Neptune, with me. So it could be something like that. Or it could be that you change up your routine, Mercury, to say that, okay, I'm going to change up my routine. I'm going to incorporate these spiritual practices. And yeah, making this change makes me more aligned with my spiritual path. So things like that, right? So this is a positive aspect. So whatever change we make to Mercury does have this silver lining of being very spiritual, in alignment with our spirituality, or just making us feel connected to the higher realms in many ways. And that's pretty much it. I know this is a lot. It's a lot. So to put it very simply, this eclipse is about transformation from the inside out and outside in. And we've been doing the work all year with the Saturn-Uranus square, and especially since the new moon in Scorpio with 4 planets direct. In October with the new moon, those planets were not direct, they were retrograde. With the new moon in Scorpio with 4 planets direct and in the sign of Scorpio with the opposition to Uranus and square to Saturn, we began the deep transformation process, a deep process of facing the truth, facing our fears, rising from the dark into the light, and transforming. And this eclipse is no different. It's just going to be a stepping stone in that transformation process. We've been working on it all year. And eclipse energy stays with us for 6 months. So maybe, I used to think, before I knew all this stuff, I used to think that when eclipses happen, I'm transformed. But no, it takes time. It's a subtle process, but the work begins now. So that's pretty much it. So just think transformation. One word for this is transformation. And now I will mention where this eclipse might be for your particular rising sign, sun sign. And I would recommend watching your rising sign and then your sun sign. And another thing is that take this with a pinch of salt, because the best thing would be to find out where 27 degrees 14 minutes of Taurus is for your particular chart and look there, that house. And the opposing 27 degrees 14 minutes of Scorpio, because that's the axis where this eclipse is happening. And take this with a pinch of salt, because if you are someone with certain big houses, certain small houses, or just a rising sign that throws these readings off, then it might be in a different house than I mentioned. So just take this with a pinch of salt, but I will mention it. And let's talk about Aries first. So Aries, Taurus is your second house. So this eclipse is going to highlight your 2nd and 8th house axis. So it's going to highlight your self-worth, your values, your skills, your finances, and your spirituality, transformation, healing, catharsis. Basically, the Taurus and Scorpio themes are more magnified for you, Aries, because you're the first sign, and the 2nd house is Taurus ruled, and the 8th house is Taurus, Scorpio ruled. So all the themes that I just mentioned for you, Aries, will be magnified. Now, Taurus, this is happening in your 1st and 7th house. So what will come into focus with this eclipse for you is you. The first house, your identity, your appearance, how the world sees you, how you present yourself to the world, your leadership skills, all those things. And on the other hand, the seventh house is Scorpio for you. So your marriage, your business partnerships, legal issues, regulations, things like that will be highlighted with this eclipse. And Gemini, for you, this is falling into your 12th and 6th house axis. So a lot of focus on spirituality, on the subconscious, on closing out the past. And if drugs, delusions, addictions, depression apply to you, then those as well. And the 6th house is the house of health and job and diet and day-to-day and the mundane. So a lot of focus on that area as well. This is the axis this eclipse is going to highlight for you. Now, Cancer, this is happening in your 11th house. The Taurus is your 11th house and your 5th house, right? Scorpio is your 5th house of that axis. And Cancer, in many ways, the 11th house is the house of your true authentic self. It's a Uranus-ruled house. It's also the house of your social circle, the groups that you belong to, your hopes, goals, and dreams, your desires. So a lot of focus there for you, Cancer, on being your true authentic self, on your desires, on your goals, on your hopes, on your social circle. And if science, tech, and innovation apply to you, then those as well. And on the other hand, Scorpio is your 5th house, so a lot of focus on children, creativity, just having fun in hobbies, you know. That's the axis that's being highlighted for you, Cancer. Now, Leo, this eclipse is happening in your 10th house. And the 10th house is, Taurus is your 10th house, right? The 10th house is the house of business and career. So a lot of focus on that for you, Leo, business and career. And on the other hand, Scorpio is your 4th house. So family, your deepest emotions, taking care of yourself, taking time out for yourself, nourishing yourself is going to be highlighted as well. That's the axis for you. And Virgo, for you, this is happening in your 9th house. Taurus is your 9th house. And Scorpio is your 3rd house. So a lot of focus on higher knowledge, higher education, wisdom, your beliefs, publishing if that applies to you. So the 9th house, foreign travel if that applies to you. And the 3rd house is the house of the immediate environment. It's your thinking, it's your communication, social media, all those things are the 3rd house. So that's what's going to be highlighted for you, Virgo. Now moving on to Libra. Libra, this is happening in your 8th and 2nd house axis. So a lot of focus on the 8th house, transforming, releasing things, letting go of things, intimate relationships, hidden things, occult things. And on the other hand, Scorpio is your 2nd house. It's going to highlight your finances, your self-worth, how you feel about yourself, all these things. Now, Scorpio, this is happening in your 7th and 1st house axis. Taurus is your 7th house and Scorpio is your 1st house, Scorpio. So this eclipse is going to be highlighting your marriage, your legal relationships, your business partnerships, legal issues, regulations, things like that. And on the other hand, it is also going to be highlighting you, your identity, who you are, how the world sees you, how you see the world, your leadership, your appearances, all those things. Now, Sag, this is happening in your 6th and 12th house axis, right? So this eclipse is going to highlight your day-to-day, your job, your routine, your health, your diet, your exercise, your nutrition, all those things on one hand. And on the other hand, your spirituality, right? Closing out the past, drugs, delusions, addictions, depression, if that applies to you. So that's the focus of this eclipse energy for you, Sag. Moving on to Capricorn. Capricorn, this eclipse is happening in your 5th and 11th house axis, right? And it is going to, Taurus is your 5th house and your Scorpio is your 11th house. So it is going to highlight children, creativity, just having fun, indulging in hobbies, indulging in fun things, following your heart, all 5th house things. And on the other hand, it's going to highlight your 11th house, your true authentic self, your hopes, goals, and dreams, your desires, science, tech, innovation, if that applies to you, the groups that you belong. So this is the theme for you, Capricorn. And Aquarius, this is happening in your 4th and 10th house axis. So Aquarius, a lot of focus on your inner self. Cancer, your 4th house, on taking care of yourself, on nourishing yourself. So a lot of focus in that area for you, also on your family, and as well as your 10th house, right? So 10th house is the house of business and career, so that's what this is going to be highlighting for you. And Pisces, this eclipse is happening in your 3rd and 9th house axis. Taurus is your 3rd house, Scorpio is your 9th house. So a lot of focus on the day-to-day, not the day-to-day, your immediate environment, your thinking, your communication, social media, all 3rd house things, as well as the 9th house, wisdom, knowledge, your beliefs, foreign travel, higher education, all 9th house things. And again, take this with a pinch of salt, and best to look at where 27 degrees, 14 minutes of Taurus and Scorpio lie in your chart. Now, I usually do the card reading before the sun sign. Since I forgot about that, I will do that now. So let's pick a few cards for this. Hope. Out of darkness comes light. I would just stop at this card, but maybe I'll pick a few more. I think this sums it up. Out of darkness comes light. What is Scorpio? I know this is happening in Taurus, but Scorpio is there too, right? It's the opposing sign. The sun is in Scorpio. Out of darkness comes light. And this whole month since November 4th is about facing the dark, facing the fears, facing all that stuff so that we can come into the light. And for that, we must have hope. So have hope, because it's not a downward, right? It's about being at the bottom and rising up. Sometimes we think Scorpio is not good or Scorpio is too intense because it's the dark. No, but it's the dark where we begin to rise. So it's a very positive sign in many ways. That's the first card. Let's pick one more. Okay. Harmony. And I think we got this for the weekly reading. Perfect balance. And I think this is many ways about finding balance, although finding balance is a Libran thing. Maybe this is an internal balance that we're talking about. After facing the fears, facing the dark, coming into the light, maybe we'll find that harmony and balance. Let's go with one more. Love. Be free from all that holds you back. This is Scorpio as well. Be free from all that holds you back. We've been speaking about it, right? Scorpio is about releasing all those fears, all that pain that closes up your heart. It's about release, it's about catharsis, it's about purification, it's about letting go of of the fear, of the pain that prevents us from love, from holding, and that holds us back. We spoke about this today, so that's another card. And okay, let's go with this. Let's go with this deck. I know, okay, it says regret. I know that I cannot change the past. Another card that's telling us to not regret, right? Because a lot of the times we hold on to things, we bury them within us. One, because of pain, yes, but also because of regret. I should have done this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done this. But that's what led you here to this point, right? And this is probably where you're meant to be. So know that you cannot change the past. And knowing that, maybe we can move forward. I know all this is easier said than done. I know. I go through the same things, so I know. But we cannot change the past, and this is a very powerful eclipse. It's been a very powerful new moon about getting rid of things, about letting go of things, about clearing out all that we hold on to that blocks us from love or blocks us from spiritual growth. Okay, now I will pick one more card. go at the top. Wonders. And I think what this is saying is that we do need to come out of the darkness into the light. This card right here says that, right? Out of darkness comes light. We have to do this. And we have to get rid of that regret or that pain or that stuff we have inside of us and be free from all that holds us back. And after that can come something wonderful. Okay, let's go with one more. Let's go with this deck. Bliss. Open your door to the divine. So I think maybe all this is also in many ways saying the same thing, right? That open your door to the divine, let the light come in. Because out of darkness comes light, and be free from all that holds you back. Don't regret, because we cannot change the past. And when we do all that, something wonderful can happen, as well as we can feel blissful, right? Because sometimes we don't feel good, or we don't feel the best because of our own self, right? What we hold inside of us. So maybe the theme for this eclipse is, yes, transformation, but transformation by letting go, by catharsis, by coming out of the dark into the light, right? And I think that sums it up pretty well. So I'm going to leave you with that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. And I will see you in one of my other videos. Bye.